Newcastle United fans, Alex, at the end of the game at Villa Park, got on with it, but in no uncertain terms. Were singing and giving out a message as to what they thought of the behaviour of Alexander Isak. We'll find out if there's a latest on that. Eddie Howe spoke briefly about it. There we are. Eddie Howe wants a resolution to the Alexander Isak situation. What does that look like, Alex?
Well, that's a pretty clear message, isn't it, to Alexander Isak, that he needs to pull his finger out and rejoin his teammates, because they've got a huge game on Monday. I don't think he's going to feature, but the atmosphere at St James's Park is going to be interesting, to say the least, because, of course, Liverpool are the visitors, and I'm sure Newcastle fans are going to make it clear exactly what they think about their attempts to sign Alexander Isak. But this Johan Wissa situation that we spoke about at the top of this section does have implications for Alexander Isak, because Newcastle, to let him go, I think still need to sign two forwards. I've mentioned that Wissa is becoming a difficult deal to do. There was talk last week of Gonzalo Ramos from PSG. That was played down to me. I'm not sure that the player is keen to swap the European champions for Newcastle. Samu at Porto is another Newcastle have inquired about, but that seems to have gone cold as well. You can talk about Ollie Watkins, but Villa, I think, would have to get a replacement to let him go this late in the window. Maybe the one who is attainable is Nicholas Jackson, but Chelsea want big money there. Do you know what, Jim? The nearer we get to the deadline, the nearer we get to September the 1st, I think the more likely it is that Alexander Isak stays at Newcastle. And then you ask the question, because those taunts were audible, and it was a majority of Newcastle fans at Villa Park making their feelings clear. How on earth does he start to patch up his relationship with the Magpies faithful?
Gee, Alex, thanks for that. Does that equate to some kind of a resolution, Simon, if Isak stays?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I think, as we've said and discussed, I think it's their own fault, Newcastle, to some extent. They've allowed a vacuum to develop where the players got bold, his agency have got bold, and they've made certain positions about what they will and won't do. Liverpool don't appear to want to move. Newcastle don't appear to want to sell the player for any price besides the one they determine, which, by the way, is their right. And perhaps if they'd have done what Marinakis had done from the outset, which is sit with a player and remind him of where he really is playing for and how things will play out for him in the real world, rather than in the sort of curated world of how an agent and player think they can live with 3 years on their contract, it might have had a better outcome. The fact is that if he isn't sold by Newcastle, then it'll become incumbent upon Eddie Howe to make sure that people embrace the return of this player. Well, he'll go in a year's time, but the fact is now Newcastle will have won a little battle in establishing themselves as a club that doesn't get pushed around by so-called legacy football clubs, and Isak will have to play properly for them, and probably will.
Do you think, Simon, in terms of like how Newcastle have handled this? I mean, he was being linked with all the top other clubs in the Premier League. Early last season, Arsenal, Liverpool were bidding for this player. Do you think with better communication behind the scenes, we've heard lots of stories that Ronaldo, for instance, Manchester United, Sir Alex Ferguson pulled him early and said, right, give me 1 more year. Give me 1 more year. Let's keep it all together, because it can implode a little bit. I think it's tricky because every press conference, I'm just wondering whether they could have anticipated what was coming.
But that's the big question, isn't it, about the leadership? I mean, they've got a huge ownership model behind the scenes that has all the money in the world, that ultimately has extreme influence in every sport that it plays in, and yet seems to be compliant with everything that goes on in English football and silent on what's happening with the big news story around their football club. And it would, with the fact that Darren Eales is no longer the CEO because he's not working there because of ill health, they seem to have nobody saying something very bold, which is this player will do as he's told. And he was saying it to the player, because what they're doing now is they're saying, like, the constant thing is, I was given an understanding. No, you weren't. You've got a contract. This constant load of old cobblers that players are trotting out now. I was given a gentleman's agreement. Oh, really? So when I draw up your contract from now on in, I'm going to draw it up on the back of a gentleman's agreement. We're not going to have contracts anymore. We're just going to have gentleman's agreement and everything. No, I don't want a gentleman's agreement. I want a proper contract. But when it comes to you wanting to leave and break your contract, then you understood it to be a gentleman's agreement, did you?
Yeah, but with better communication, then that's not lost.
I agree.
Interpretation. Yeah. So there may be a missing link here, and it's maybe Eddie's missing out because that's not being communicated to
absolutely.
the player.
But the Marinakis stepped into the void at Nottingham Forest and went to the player and said to him, I don't think so, son.
Yeah. And what we do know is Newcastle play Liverpool, as Alex said, a week tonight. Ooh, that'll be interesting.